Hey everyone, it's Bob. Welcome back to Elevate Your AIQ. Today I'm excited to be joined by Jeff Riley. He's the former Massachusetts Commissioner of Education and now the Executive Director of Day of AI, a nonprofit spun out of MIT's RAISE initiative. RAISE stands for Responsible AI for Social Empowerment and Education, focused on building AI literacy and ensuring responsible use of AI in education. With more than 30 years in public education as a teacher, principal, superintendent, and state leader, Jeff brings a deep commitment to student well-being and equity, which made him the ideal person to lead this work at the national level. In this episode, we explore what it really means to prepare students and educators for an AI-powered future and how to strike the right balance between innovation and safeguarding human potential. We also spotlight the Responsible AI for America's Youth initiative and the upcoming America's Youth AI Festival, set for summer 2026 on the MIT campus and across my hometown of Boston. Stay with us for an inspiring, thought-provoking, and yes, wicked good discussion. Thanks as always for listening to Elevate Your AIQ. Let's go talk to Jeff. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This is Bob Pulver. I am your host, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Jeffrey Riley. How you doing today, Jeff?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to dig into this conversation about responsible AI and AI literacy. Those are the primary topics of this show, and you guys are doing amazing work at Day of AI in partnership with MIT as RAISE initiative. And so we want to hear all about it. But before we do that, I want to hear about you and your background and what got you to this point.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on. I was in public education for 32 years. I started as a teacher, a school counselor, assistant principal, deputy superintendent. Then I concluded the last 6.5 years of my career as the Commissioner of Education in Massachusetts. I thought I was going to retire. And then our friends at MIT called and said, hey, we're launching a nonprofit out of MIT focused on AI and education. Do you want to come lead this organization? And I said, can I say what I want? And I think they were a little taken aback by that. And they were like, what do you mean? And I said, well, 15 years ago, we didn't regulate social media. And it appears, based on the research coming out, that we may have some mental health challenges with our kids because of that. We see rising rates of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, because kids are, judging their self-worth based on how many likes they get on TikTok. Now, that's obviously an oversimplification, but it does seem like there are some problems with that technology. AI, I think, is going to be actually the next catalyst for a revolution in education, but it has to be done well because there are some real problems with AI too. And so as long as we were starting from a place where we were going to focus on keeping kids safe and then teaching them how to use this technology productively, I was in, and they agreed. And so here we are today.
Yeah, that's amazing. So tell me about the sort of partnership and how you work together. I know your co-founder, Cynthia, she's also running the RAISE initiative. Is that right? So talk to me a little bit about the partnership.
So Cynthia Brazil is a famous MIT professor. She was just named one of Time Magazine's top 100 people in AI and the only one named in the education sector. So
Wow.
she's a special human being.
Yeah.
And they had been working with RAISE, which is, responsible AI for student empowerment inside their own organization. But I think what they found was there was this growing need for school districts to be trained. And that couldn't really be done inside the auspices of MIT itself. And so we'd need to kind of launch a nonprofit out that could do that work and be, a cousin to MIT. I mean, I still have my workspace at the MIT Media Lab. That's where we have our offices. We travel with them to different events, and we obviously share a lot of people and best practices. But we spun off as this nonprofit because, there's just such a need out in schools to try to figure this out. And so AI, Day of AI has been set up as this kind of unique fusion of what I would say young MIT technologists and experienced, read old people, educators like myself. And because the techies really understand in a deep way what AI is and what can be done with it. And I think the educators understand how to apply it in schools. So it's been this just amazing fusion of kind of brain capital together. And what we do is really three things, right? We train teachers and administrators. We help people with policy, and then we build AI literacy curriculum.
Well, that's a huge, make it sound simple, but those are enormous undertakings. And because we're not even just talking about the US, right? I mean, you're having a global impact. I thought you could just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, our materials are in over 170 countries right now. Half my team just came back from Dubai for a summit of, 30 or 40 countries trying to figure this out. I think there's a recognition that this is the future and that kids are going to need to be equipped to use these tools. There's a lot of, I think, anxiety about artificial intelligence, and some people think it's going to replace people. But when I speak publicly, I say, we don't think AI is going to replace teachers, for instance, but we do think in the future, people with AI skills are going to replace those without AI skills in order to compete in this new economy. And if that's the case, then our students need to be well versed in what AI is and what it's not, and really be literate in this new technology so they can use it as a tool. At the end of the day, this is a pretty powerful tool, but it can make mistakes. It has bias. There's issues with it. And we need to make sure that our children really have a true understanding of how to use it appropriately.
One of the things that came up in my own school district, because I mentioned earlier, we did form a like an AI task force of educators, administrators, parents, and we'll probably pull students into that as well. But how you sort of level up across disciplines, right? Like, so I don't know if the toolkit and some of your resources address this, but like, making sure that teachers within a department, all the English teachers, all the math teachers, whatever, all are all sort of on the same, approaching it the same way, especially when it comes to responsibility and student expectations and maybe how they design their curriculum. But is there specific instruction and educational materials around specific disciplines, or is it more, let's make sure we we're the rising tide that lifts all boats, and then people can sort of customize to their sort of domain on top of that, or how is it sort of structured?
So, we have a website where people can go. All they have to do is put in their email address. Don't worry, we won't spam you. But that gets you kind of behind the curtain to a lot of free resources, whether that's our AI curriculum that's K to 12 and hits a variety of disciplines, or our toolkits, the most recent one we did with Common Sense Media with families. There's a lot of stuff there that kind of helps you begin the process. But what we found is after districts kind of, look and get a little familiar, they want us to come in and work intensively with teachers in particular to kind of set the stage for what this could look like in the future. And so typically I would come and do a keynote speech and kind of put all of this in perspective, where we've been in education, where we are now, where we could go. I kind of reassure them that AI is not going to replace teachers. I think the bedrock of education is personal relationships. But I also show them that AI can make their lives easier. And whether that's, helping to write an IEP, or if you're a principal, helping to schedule a building, a simple note home to a parent using ChatGPT, there are all these tools that can make a teacher's life easier and free up time and space for them to, God forbid, wait for it, get back to the thing they got into teaching for, building engaging, exciting lessons, right? And so imagine a world where we give teachers the time and space to really think about their instruction and build exciting, engaging lessons, and not handcuff them or burden them with all of these administrative tasks.
That's just crazy talk, Jeff. That's crazy. Yeah.
I spent a career tilting at windmills, my friend. I still believe.
So one of the other things that I talk to people about a lot is like, what do we mean when we talk about like responsible AI, right? So just to give you a little bit of context, I spend a lot of time in like the human resources and talent acquisition technology space. So a lot of that is around certainly mitigating bias and making fair decisions. Do I trust the output of these tools? I think a lot of that is sort of universal across domains, but I guess I'm curious, you know, as I try to do my part to increase, AI, responsible AI literacy, how do you frame it in terms of the fairness, and don't use it as a give you the answers, use it as a coach, tutor, mentor kind of thing, but also I guess stretching into macro kind of responsibilities in terms of, environment, energy consumption, those kinds of things. I mean, do you cover all facets of responsible AI, or where do you focus?
We do. I think, part of the reason we got deeply engaged in this work is we wanted to be kind of a beacon that stands up for kids first and foremost and teachers. We know big tech is big tech. They do a lot of great things, but they're also at the end of the day trying to sell product. And so we're kind of agnostic about tools. Our interest is to provide the full story, the good and the bad, of which we see both in AI, right? I mean, you mentioned a bunch of things. There's voice clones, deep fakes, energy issues, bias, hallucinations, plagiarism for the English teachers out there. I mean, there's just a myriad of issues that have to be addressed. AI companions might be something that a lot of people aren't talking about, but we've been beating the drum about recently. And so kids need to understand what AI is and what it isn't. And I'll give you an example. We worked with Common Sense Media to build a toolkit for parents and school districts to help parents engage kids on AI because Common Sense Media took some data and then found that I think the stat is more than 70% of kids are using an AI companion, which is like, I think of it as an AI imaginary friend or
Yeah.
its equivalent.
Yeah.
But only 30% of parents think their kids are using any kind of AI. So there's such a wide gulf between what the kids are doing and what the parents think that they're doing. We've got to cross that bridge, and we need parents more involved in school in a way we never did before so that we're all kind of on the same page. And just to kind of underscore why this is so important, we've seen instances where an AI companion has helped a kid, with self-injurious behavior up to and including suicide, where an AI companion is, in some cases, it's believed, helped a kid along to kill himself, right? And so we need kids to understand that is not a real person. This is an algorithm, a prediction algorithm at the other end of the line, and it can make mistakes. And we need parents to understand what their kids are up to. And so that launch that we had the other day with Common Sense Media around that toolkit is something that I think districts have gravitated towards for family nights to make sure that they are on the same page with families on this important topic. And I don't want to be doom and gloom, but we really go deep into what all the problems are with artificial intelligence. I mean, one of the things, maybe the most important part of this, which isn't getting a lot of discussion right now, is this idea of, our kids just turning over their cognitive heft to the technology. And let me give you an example. My kids, I went to the Boston Public Schools, and they can't write in cursive. Nobody told me that was going to happen, but cursive apparently wasn't a thing that they need to know
Yeah.
anymore. Okay, I can probably live with that. They'll probably be fine. My kids were born in the city of Boston, were raised in the city of Boston, but can't get anywhere in the city of Boston without Waze or another GPS type app. I can get everywhere in the city of Boston because I lived before they had these things and I needed to know landmarks and street signs. Okay, so my kids don't have that spatial relationship skill. Is that okay or not? What happens if the plug gets kicked out? Well, now people are saying, well, kids don't need to learn to write anymore because we have AI. And I'm saying, wait a minute. Writing is thinking, right? Kids need to be able to order their thoughts and build a coherent argument. And and there's a danger here that we kind of turn our brain power over to the technology and become drones. And we our brain just atrophies, and that's a real problem in a time when we know AI is not always right. So I have ChatGPT on my phone. I have Gemini. I have different things because I geek out on some of this stuff,
Yep.
but I probably use ChatGPT 5 to 10 times a day. At least once, I know it's telling me incorrect information. And I fight with ChatGPT, and then it apologizes to me for giving me the wrong information. Well, if you're a kid and you don't have a knowledge base, you are not going to know that you're getting wrong information. You're just going to accept what you get from them, and you have to be a critical thinker. And so our dream is that, we raise a generation of children that have a healthy skepticism towards this technology, but know how to use it safely and productively.
Yeah, I think that last point is something I bring up all the time in terms of, if you don't have domain expertise, you may not go that extra step to sort of question what sounds right. It's like your know-it-all friend, right? They got an answer for everything, right?
Right.
And so,
And it presents it as like, I know the answer. And it's just like, you got to teach kids they don't always know the answer.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a good exercise just to have people go through in general, right? It's just let's just do a little experiment. Like ask it something about a topic you know nothing about, and then let's cross-reference that with either, I don't know, you could start by just asking a different AI and see if that gives you a different answer, which it probably
You're
will.
picking up on one of our training tips is,
Yeah,
compare what ChatGPT says to what Grok or Gemini says, right? That's a
yeah,
smart way to think about it.
yeah,
Also, teach kids how to ask your AI to cite their sources and then go look those up. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be the lawyer who recently was sanctioned because he turned in a brief to a judge before the case citing case law that was completely made up and hallucinated, right? And the judge knew his law frontwards and backwards and knew these weren't real cases. The lawyer just lazily didn't even check the work and so turned it in, and now he or she could be disbarred. And so kids need to understand the fallibilities that come with this technology. Will it get better in the future? Maybe. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the internet first came out, right? And it was dial up and it was AOL and it was slow and it got better, but it's never, I think, going to be perfect. And so whether that's issues of bias, fairness, or hallucinations, I mean, I think they're going to be with us for a long time.
yeah. I imagine you guys talk about, data privacy as well.
Absolutely.
And so I was curious, we could just dig into that a little bit because I know parents, well, we already had parents submit questions in advance of our Ask Us Anything session, and that did come up a couple of times. How are you protecting, the privacy of the students' data? Is there visibility to their prompts? I mean, how is all this working? Because the schools, yeah, they're on Google Classroom, and there's probably, I know OpenAI is trying to get in there as well, but there's, as you know, millions of other, non, LLM big tech companies who are trying to build ed tech, products in that space too. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so it's an interesting time, right? My children are in their early 20s now, but I remember having to have very specific conversations with them about being online and how everything, the internet is forever, right? And we now know that it's gone even deeper than that, where basically every keystroke you touch is being accumulated into big data. And this is, without question, the most surveilled generation of children we've ever seen. And so I'm not sure parents understand that all the time and are having those discussions with kids about, what you're doing, what you're on. And so that's just the parent piece. And that's a really important discussion to have. But when it comes to schools, what we found is kind of the tech directors haven't always been great gatekeepers of students.
Hi, this is Stacey Harris.
And this is Terry Zipper, and we're the host of the two podcasts under the HR Huddle.
On Spilling the Tea on HR Tech, we uncover the latest trends, truths, and challenges from Sapient Insight Group's groundbreaking research and our analyst insights, serving up everything you need to know about HR tech with no sugarcoating.
And on HR, we have a problem. We tackle the toughest workplace challenges head on, offering you expert advice and actionable solutions to help HR leaders thrive in today's fast-changing world. Whether you want the scoop on tech or tools to solve people problems, we've got you covered.
Take a listen and subscribe. If you want to become part of our community, we'd love to see you.
Data privacy, right? And so anytime you're going to bring on a vendor, you need to understand what's happening on the back end and where that data is going or not going. And they've had to be much more vigilant about this in a way that they probably couldn't before. I mean, you described how these different companies are out there. They're offering free things. Well, nothing's really free. It's either we're going to, get you hooked on this program and then you're going to pay for it for a subscription 2 years from now, or they're back-ending the data and, selling that or whatever. So there's real concerns here about how we keep our kids safe in a way that we've never had to worry about in the past. And so if you're a tech director, you've got to almost have to scrutinize every contract that comes in. And right now there's a myriad of AI vendors out there that are trying to get into schools. And that's great. Some of those products are wonderful, but some of those products are also tracking kids and their information.
Yeah, and I think there's a foundation of what we've experienced. You talked earlier about social media and all these tracking applications. I mean, these kids are freely just sharing their location throughout the day. I mean, it's crazy actually. But yeah, you've got to really think about where do you draw the line, but also how do you protect, harm from coming to these kids without infringing on their privacy. So I'm sure there's some cyber experts trying to, figure all that out. How do you anonymize and encrypt, data, but still somehow isolate where, they're using a companion in an inappropriate or dangerous way.
Yeah, and, I mean, I think that's always, the case that's happening. I would just point to, there was so much fervor around like blockchains, right? And beyond Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is one example where people thought like, oh, you've got this, elliptical algorithm that can't be broken. Well, guess what? Quantum computing in probably the next 5 years is going to be able to break that. And so there's no guarantee that we can completely data proof our kids in a way, but you've got to do everything you can to try to protect them, at every outset. And as educators, we have a fundamental responsibility to try to keep our kids' privacy intact to the greatest degree possible.
I wanted to ask you about some of the programs that you guys are doing around like leaning into kids, not just their critical thinking, but their creativity. And because I don't want people to think that this is all about like, core, subjects like, English, math, chemistry, whatever. It's it's bigger than that, and it does affect the sort of creative arts. And so, we've seen use cases coming out of, whether it's Hollywood or, you know, writers or whatever it is, where AI is sort of either infringing copyright or it's taking work away from, people who are creators, content creators, right? Of which that's a growing cohort, right? And so I guess how do you, I guess as part of like the broad landscape of AI is ubiquitous, and we need to pay attention to it no matter what your student is going to do in the future. They may not need to go to college, they may want to go to college, but whatever career path they take, there's some aspect of their personal and professional life that's going to involve AI to some degree.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, the world changes, right? And we have to accept that. My kids like to tease me all the time. They say, oh, Dad, tell us again when there was no internet and the phone was attached to the wall and there was no microwave ovens. How did you eat? Which I get as an indictment of me as a parent because not really good with the stove. But that's all true, right? The internet for the first 20 years of my life was called the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yep.
And in the Riley family, I think we were missing the S volume. So I've got major knowledge gaps there. But things change, and we figured it out, right? Like I was the guy that was when I don't know if you remember when cell phones first came out, and all the New York stockbrokers had those giant cell phones with the recharge cases. And I remember being the guy being like, "Look at this guy! I'll never have a cell phone. What a donkey this guy is!" And then as I'm retiring from state service, I'm turning in 2 cell phones, right? Like so, it's just things change, and we've got to adapt, and we've got to be open to it. Now, when we think about our kids, we want them to be safe. And we want to really focus on that. And what I've argued is this AI is a really powerful tool. And when my kids learned to drive, I didn't just throw them the car keys, right? They had to go through driver's education. And then I had to white knuckle in the front seat of the car as they learned how to figure this out. Okay. AI, I would argue, is more powerful than any car. And so I think our kids need to prove that they're AI literate, that they understand what this is, what it's not, and really be well versed in it to be able then to use it. And part of that also means kids proving that they already have a knowledge base, that they're not going to offload their brain power to the technology, that they actually prove that they can do this. I don't know if we talked about, but the PISA International Assessment in 2029 is going to have a discrete AI literacy test. That's where this test compares us. They do math and the different subjects. Now they're adding AI literacy to it. And, it's the United States gets compared to all these other countries. It's going to be truly embarrassing if the country that created artificial intelligence, the United States of America, scores number 27 in the world on AI literacy for kids. But I think if we don't get the word out, that we're in danger of having that happen right now. I'm not sure if I answered the question. Sorry, I went off a little bit.
No, I mean, that's a scary thought, and I think it's an important one, and why I'm so excited to have this conversation, because I don't think people yet realize just how impactful this technology is. And so there's a lot of education that I do around, what do we even mean when we talk about AI, right? We're not just talking about sort of automating certain tasks to make you more efficient. It's about using it in a decision-making capacity, using it to create, content, using it to sort of augment our own human abilities and do more, be capable of more. So it's really enhancing our own potential to succeed, right?
I love that. That's the dream scenario, which is, some people like to refer to it as a calculator, and they say, oh, back in the day when the calculators first came in, they said, oh, kids will be dumber. They won't be able to do math anymore. And the truth is, when graphing calculators came out, kids could do deeper math. And the hope is that I like to refer to it like a moving walkway at an airport. You can get on and it'll take you faster across the airport tarmac or wherever you're going, or you can walk on it and go twice as fast. And the dream scenario is you're able to walk, that you have that knowledge base, and AI can take you further and faster than you ever did before. And so for us at Day of AI, getting back to your earlier question, we're asking kids to demonstrate leadership in this area and to show exemplars on what that looks like. Some of that is about our AI festival this summer at MIT, where we're going to highlight 250 kids to have them demonstrate how they're using AI in their world. Some of it is about building a better world, using AI to solve for a better world. They're going to submit exhibits for that. One of my favorite things is we're flying in 2 kids from each state to serve as senators, and they're going to go to the Edward M. Kennedy Institute, which is an exact replica of the U.S. Senate, and build a national student AI policy, which I can assure you is going to be done long before the adults have a national AI policy, right? But to your earlier question, 2 of the other things we're doing are around the arts. Me, Myself, and AI, which we've done with recently at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, where artists are actually drawing their own self-portrait, and then they're asking AI through DALL-E or another program to generate a self-portrait, and then discussions ensue. And what we found for that, for example, is particularly students of color are not well represented, or the AI doesn't do a good job of representing them when we ask it to draw a self-portrait. Now, maybe that's about bias inside the programming, right? The other thing we're doing is we're having a musical theater presentation at the Lindy Pavilion on the MIT campus, where kids are going to incorporate AI into a musical theater performance. And so that's how the arts get involved as well, right? And so we just think there's different ways for kids to show leadership. But the key is, to your point, which is to help them go further and faster, not to have it replace their creativity or their artistry.
Yeah, I mean, we started exploring that. I spent the bulk of my career at IBM, and the latter third of that was with IBM Watson. And so one of the programs,
Oh, yes.
one of the programs that I led was this entrepreneurial community where people were trying to build novel solutions with these different cognitive APIs, we used to call them. And so the very last thing that I was doing before I left IBM was a partnership between IBM Watson and the Tribeca Film Festival. And so this was 2017-ish, but it was the first time that I really got exposed to, we're not just solving sort of, core, enterprise business problems. We're actually out there looking at more creative pursuits, and how can AI not replace the artist, but what could you as an artist plus AI do differently, do better, and have that be a unique form of expression into itself. And so that was my sort of first, foray into, again, non sort of traditional business kind of use cases. And I think that's a really important topic coming up now, because we want to maintain our innate human abilities around creativity, critical thinking, curiosity. I mean, these are things that are really important to explore. And I think that's where a lot of people feel, threatened if those were the kinds of, careers or even extracurricular, pursuits that people want to explore.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, let me say, I think it's incredible you worked on Watson. Was it Watson that beat Gary Kasparov back in the day? The chess master, or was it the Jeopardy thing?
That was that. Yeah, it was Watson was Jeopardy. Deep Blue was the chess.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, those two examples were like the precursor that, hey, this thing is coming. In my opinion, they were like seminal moments, right? When you can beat the contestants, Ken Burns or whatever Ken Jennings on Jeopardy, and when you're beating Kasparov in chess, like it's like something's happening here, and that something is here right now. And so, what an amazing opportunity you have to in background to know about where all of this came from, because that's kind of an iterative event where you were there at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's set a pretty high bar for some of the things that I mean, obviously, some of that sort of predictive and analytical AI is different than generative AI, but I was sort of alluding to this before, like people should have this foundational knowledge of what do we mean when we say AI. Not all AI is generative, and you're not always going to be, you know, what we right now call prompt engineering. We don't know that may not have a lot of legs going forward. You're going to use your voice. You're going to have other ways to interact with AI, but it's very different now that the general public is interacting directly with AI, where like the user interface, the UI is directly with AI, which we didn't have back when Watson was around. It was sort of almost like middleware, like behind the scenes.
It's the democratization of this, which is really powerful, I think, right? But it raises that question even more. How do you stay human in a time of this technology? We talked earlier about AI companions, right? Like kids having these AI imaginary friends. Like it's legitimately possible for a kid today in high school to put his earbuds in the morning, talk to his imaginary friend at breakfast in the cafeteria, go through the day and never interact with another human, put his earbuds back in at lunch, talk to his imaginary friend, and go home. And we've lost some of these human interpersonal skills. I've done some work with Michelle Pulver at the Rhythm Project, and that is some really scary stuff where she's concerned that with the rise of AI companions, this is just the beginning. You're going to have AI bots that can substitute as your girlfriend or your husband or your wife, and we're going to lose all that connection. And she's showing data where she's concerned like people won't be having babies in the future because of this technology. And so it really expresses the need for us as humans to have these discussions about what it means to remain human, how we can use this technology, when we should use this technology, but also how do we make sure we stay human in this time of extreme change?
Yeah, I mean, these are really almost existential questions,
Correct.
right? I mean, it's scary. And yeah, I mean, I guess I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of higher education. Obviously, you're working with MIT and some other universities, but is it, when we talk to high schoolers, for example, and they're considering college, or maybe they already applied. My daughter's a senior, so she's already applied to a bunch of schools. Are higher education institutions have they already embraced AI to a reasonable degree, or do they still have a ways to go as well?
They have a ways to go. The policy at Harvard University right now, according to some interns that we work with, is basically the professors will decide if the kids can use it or not. But stepping back from that, I see two kind of shifts. The first is we're starting to see a lot of community college recognize that this AI is a vocational skill-based approach, and that kids could go and do an AI pathway in a community college and be highly marketable in the new economy that's coming, which might be different from where in the past we've sent kids to college and we expected that they were going to be guaranteed to have a position. We see kids now sometimes coming out of four-year colleges and becoming barristers at Starbucks, right? And so parents are revisiting that value proposition. And I think that started with vocational schools in K-12, where we suddenly started seeing the the reimagination of vocational schools, and the demand spiked over the last few years for that programming because parents were doing a value proposition and recognizing that a kid who's an electrician or a plumber might have better job prospects than if they had gone to a four-year college. So that's one way we're seeing this. Another way we're starting to see this, at least through Day of AI, is, we're having college presidents contact us and help them with a lot of their graduate programs. How do we incorporate a class for our teachers who are learning to be teachers in AI so they can be better prepared? How do we get our social workers to understand about AI so they can be better prepared? So there's this kind of both and approach happening. I think as things turn to like the job market with higher ed and graduate schools, they're recognizing that AI has to be part of it. I do think it's going to be fascinating to watch what comes out of how four-year institutions that are already under a lot of pressure because of the declining population of 18-year-olds, and at least in New England, we're starting to see some schools fold because they're not financially viable anymore. How do they start migrating and changing their approach to incorporate AI or not? Now, remember, I think there are AI skills that kids need to learn, but you all still need to have a knowledge base. So how do schools begin to grapple with that idea about how to best prepare a kid? And I would argue, kids need a knowledge base, but they also need to be able to think critically when they're using this technology. So it's, we talk in education, sometimes we talk about the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic, I guess. Now the third one is a little dicey with the R, but now the fourth one is also dicey. I think it's going to be reading, writing, arithmetic, and artificial intelligence skills, right? Starting with the artificial intelligence skills. So I think people are going to have to really think deeply about how they're going to set up their programming. There could be a world, to your earlier point, where a four-year college isn't needed anymore, isn't as necessary anymore, or just fundamentally changes what that experience is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it bears watching.
Yeah, I was admittedly not the best student, but there was definitely a lot of personal growth that happened.
Look how well you've done.
Right? Look at me now. So, but you're right. I mean, I think people need to look at it as just the evolution. I mean, I think back to when I got a computer in school, right? So I was in middle school when computers showed up, and all of a sudden we had turned a classroom into like a computer lab or whatever, and we learned some basic, coding.
What does it really take to lead with impact in today's ever-evolving world? Welcome to Inside the C-Suite, the podcast where influence, energy, innovation, and empathy converge. Hi, I'm Christy Honeycutt, your host. Join me as I sit down with the boldest voices in leadership, visionaries who are not just making decisions, but making a difference. In every episode, we explore the heart of leadership. How do high-performing leaders harness their energy? How do they lead with empathy without losing their edge? How do they turn disruption into innovation and pressure into purpose? You'll hear unfiltered stories of adversity, resilience, and the raw moments that shaped true influence. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence, passion, and the energetic exchange that fuels transformation. Inside the C-Suite is your invitation to lead from a deeper place with intention, connection, and courage. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and unlock what really moves leaders to action, hit subscribe and step inside. You can find us wherever you get your podcast fix. Inside the C-Suite, well, we're an energetic exchange. Let's lead with influence, live with energy, and create with empathy.
Logo or something was there? Yeah, not quite that advanced. But yeah, I mean, not teaching AI literacy now is like not giving us computers back in whatever that was, the mid '80s. And so you can't deprive people of this type of education now. I do think, I don't know, I guess a question to you is, do you see K-12 schools, anyone doing like a dedicated like AI class, like an elective, or is it all, how do we sort of augment the existing curriculum with a little sprinkle of AI where appropriate?
So I've heard of some schools begin to think about how to bring like an AI elective to students. I haven't personally seen it in practice.
Okay.
What I have seen, however, is schools recognizing that they need to start with their teachers, because teachers are in a wide variety of positions on artificial intelligence. And people are, as you know, people have different skill sets around this technology to begin with. And so one of the slides I show when I speak publicly is of 3 tidal waves. And in the first wave, the guy's trying to hold back the tide. In the second wave, he's buried his head in the sand. And in the third tidal wave, he's surfing the wave. And what I say to teachers is, we need to start going surfing, but you don't even have to start surfing today. Just dip your toe in the water and start the process, because people are in just a variety of places. And then we try to show them different examples of how this can be brought, first to make their lives easier, to take away a lot of the administrative burden, but also you don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. You've got a great lesson. We can work with you to infuse AI into it to make it even better, right? And once they see that, I think people are willing to jump in a way that maybe they wouldn't have done before. And that's why I think kind of the deeper trainings we do with districts, where we go and work with them usually between 4 and 6 times during the course of a year, have been the most impactful thing that I've seen, because you've got to get teachers on board first before you can really start servicing students.
Yeah, that's the way my school district here approaches it, which I totally understand, because they need to understand how it might be able to help them with lesson plans, or understanding how to think more deeply about whether these kids are learning the right things.
And it sounds like what you've done is what we recommend, where districts kind of get a working group together that includes teachers, to be sure, administrators, but also parents and students, to start thinking about how this can be implemented in their school system, to learn more about it together. We trained a district in Medfield, Mass recently, and I showed a slide of, an AI attention detection device. This is a vendor selling this device that sits on a teacher's desk and tracks students' eye movements to see if they're paying attention or not. And I said to them, do you think this is a good idea or a bad idea? And the kid, who was in high school, said, this is like Orwellian. This is 1984. And I was like, thank you. We're done for the day. You are an educated young man to understand that this is exactly the kind of critical conversations we have. And the kid had the knowledge base to know that, right? And I don't know much in the world, but I know this. I probably wouldn't have been the commissioner of education in Massachusetts if they were tracking my attention in high school, right?
Right. Likewise.
Right? Like, I wasn't the polished gem you see before you now. I mean, I was a little rough around the edges. And so, we've got to have these discussions, and we've got to be thoughtful about it, right? About how we're going to roll this out. I just worry that a lot of people are still, sticking their head in the sand. There's still people out there that say we're going to ban the technology. I don't think that's reasonable. We recognize at Day of AI that this technology is incredibly powerful and impactful, and could start the next revolution in education and help us differentiate and personalize instruction in a way we never could before.
Yeah.
It's really exciting, but there's some problems that we have to grapple with as a community first, so that we do this safely and productively.
Yeah. So one of the things that, just thinking back to your comment about social media, when social media came about, just reflecting back to my time at IBM again, IBM basically crowdsourced the social media guidelines, right? So it sounds a little bit akin to what you're doing with this sort of AI, Bill of Rights that you're going to have these students sort of come up with, right? Because we're all in this together, right? And we want to do it with you, and we want to build trust across this ecosystem. And so anytime it seems like a top-down, sort of mandate, you're gonna get some pushback. So I think certainly there are differences, because we were employees and we were adults, and so they were treating us like adults, and we had a sort of educated perspective, and we brought a lot of cognitive diversity to those guidelines, but it was fundamentally grounded in trust. We're going to trust you to be adults when you're out in social media. Just put in your Twitter handle that your opinions are your own, and then just do what you want, right? And then, but when it comes to students, I do feel like giving them that voice is really important. But have you heard any pushback that says, well, they're not adults? We can say we want to trust them, but we still need to be, skeptical and say, well, we are literally the adults in the room, and so we'll take this under advisement, but we're making the rules here.
I mean, adults are always good at taking things under advisement from students. What I would say, though, as kids have been born into this technology as digital natives. We've come to it later in the game. I think the ability to appreciate their expertise and their understanding will go a long way to getting buy-in from kids. And by the way, a lot of the high school kids we work with are skeptical of AI from the beginning because they saw what happened with social media with some of their friends, right? So they saw that technology for technology's sake is not always a positive, and there can be drawbacks. So they have a lot of great insights into this in a way that I think some adults wouldn't appreciate or understand. The fact that a kid can pull up, this is Orwellian in 1984, is a testament to that, right? So, I'm not saying abdicate everything to the students. On the other hand, we need to recognize that they do bring expertise to the table. And I think it needs to be valued in a way we haven't done that before.
There's another analogy I was thinking about that I wanted to run by you. In the talent acquisition space, we have job candidates that are using AI, not just to help write a better resume. They're using AI in the middle of an interview, right? So I'm on Zoom. Let's say I'm interviewing you as a job candidate. You have a second screen, a second device off camera that's listening to our conversation, listening to the questions I'm asking you, and then you could just glance over and look at a solid, response to that question. And so we get into all these debates. Well, shouldn't I have that ability? I'm going to use AI on the job. Shouldn't I be able to use it now? And it's just which part of we're trying to assess how your human brain works is unclear, right? I know you're going to use AI when you get here. You're not here yet. I want to know how you think. I want to know how you think through problems. I want to know how you resolve conflict. I want to know how you lead, right? And so the vendors in this space who are giving these assessments, in some cases, are saying, well, we're never going to be able to. Detection gets a lot of false positives. It's not foolproof, and we're not going to deter people from cheating because everyone's always trying to get a leg up on everybody else. So how do we redesign these assessments and these interviews such that we're measuring the right things? And so I relate that to kids in school. Again, some similar concepts of trying to do better write a better essay, do better on a test or whatever. But I also don't want to get kids in trouble when they don't deserve to be in trouble. So what are your thoughts on that whole scenario?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I worry that people will go to one end of the spectrum or the other when they probably need both. And what I mean by that is this. I would have loved to have a second screen open to know that Watson was the one that beat Blue or beat whichever one, or beat Keith Jennings, or vice versa, and it was Deep Blue that did the other one, right? I would have loved to have been able to do that, and I think to show that you have that skill is important for an employer to know, you've got the ability to navigate this tech. I would also love to put a bubble up around myself or around the candidate I'm interviewing where they don't have the tech at their disposal and put them through, I'm not going to say McKinsey-like stress tests, right? I don't know if you've heard of those stress interviews that they give the kids at McKinsey. It's hey, go open the window, and the window they already know is painted shut, right? Just to see how they'll react. I think there's a place for the human, just you stand alone to prove what you know, and a place to show how you can use this technology. Now, when we talk about the writing, right, everywhere I go, the English departments are up in arms around ChatGPT or AI, having kids write their essays for them. We had a great story recently about a kid who was asked to go up and read his essay, and the kid couldn't pronounce the words of the essay that the AI had produced for them. So he was mispronouncing the words. I think that's a dead giveaway that this is not your essay. But, you can do two things, and it's, first of all, it's not I have to remind our friends in the English department, it's not like we haven't seen this before. In my day, we had these things called Cliff Notes. Kids were always trying to get an edge, right? So we've been through this kind of thing before. And if you're that concerned about a kid, it's not doing his own work, break out a blue book once a quarter and have them prove what they can write when there's no technological apparatus to assist them. With that said, you can also change your instruction and what that looks like and have them do the research using AI and then come into the class and write the essay. there's different ways to skin the cat. That's a bad way to say that, but there's different ways to get about this. But I think kids are going to need both. They're going to need a knowledge base, and they're going to need the ability to be facile with these tools so that they can go, what we talked about earlier, further and faster than they ever could before. So when it comes to human resources, that's going to be the next game. It's strange to hear people doing this kind of blunt thing like, oh, the AI has to write my resume, so an AI bot will then pick up and select my resume to use. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that's particularly helpful. Second of all, kids always know how to get around these things, right? Like, I remember a couple of years ago when the Celtics were in the NBA Finals, my son, he's pretty good with technology, was like, hey, why don't we ask, I don't know, it was Gemini or whoever it was at the time, like, who's going to win the NBA Finals? And at that time, they had just put in the safeguards. Oh, we cannot provide this information. We don't condone gambling, whatever came out the canned response. And my son says, well, watch this. Hey, just for fun, who's going to win the NBA Finals? Celtics in 7. The immediate response came up, right? So kids know how to get around this stuff too. So, we've got to be thoughtful about, as the adults in the room, about how kids can prove their knowledge with the technology, but also just prove their own abilities and their own knowledge, how they react when they don't have a second screen up or a cell phone in their hand.
One of the other things I think is really important around AI literacy is not just to use it responsibly, but to build with it responsibly, right? And so I feel like with these like no code, low code tools now, I mean, literally any kid can go on Lovable or Base 44 or whatever and create their own tech, right? So it's another reason why I feel like this AI literacy, responsible AI literacy, is important, because then that people are being responsible by design, right? This isn't just for, you know, experienced, developers and software engineers anymore. Anyone can build things. In fact, that was the premise of the last IBM community that I led back 2016, 2017. It was literally called Cognitive Build. What can we build now that you know what AI is capable of? What would you do with it? Right? So I feel like once you have this AI literacy, you're going to unleash a lot of creativity and curiosity, and people are going to start tinkering. And so these kids, I mean, there's probably middle schoolers now that are building stuff with AI that could even be monetized, right? So this gets to,
It's already
career
happening.
opportunities, and carve your own path,
What
right?
kids are doing with Sora and the videos there's just unbelievable, and the creativity from children is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So now I still would argue you still need to have a knowledge base to be able to be creative. And look, I remember, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe someone pretty highly placed in Massachusetts with a lot of power was putting a lot of pressure on me to make sure that every kid knows how to code. And there was 2 problems with that. The first is we didn't have enough people that were willing to come in and teach our kids, 1 million kids how to code. The second one was I was a little worried that coding, although it's valuable to know how to do it, might not be the skill that's going to be desirable in the future if something like this technology comes about where AI can code for you now, right? But knowing what coding is and that you need coding is going to be more important than actually knowing specifically how to program in the code. And now people can fight with me about that and say, well, we still need coders, and I get that. But for the majority of kids, they need to understand what coding is and how it works. I've got a fun lesson I do, an analog lesson on making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which teach kids how to prompt appropriately. But this was a lesson that started at MIT that they used to give to the graduate students to remind them about the importance of specific directions, which is what coding is.
Yeah.
Right. And so the ability to recognize that this technology is always moving and moving fast means that kids need to have a knowledge base. They need to have the critical thinking skills so they can adjust and adapt to whatever's coming down the pike in 6 months.
I can't thank you enough for spending so much time with me. This is really an important topic, and I'm just so thrilled with the work that you and the team are doing at Day of AI and at MIT. It's really inspirational. And so thank you for being here. Is there where can people find more information about the upcoming, summer, the festival, right? The America's Youth festival next summer?
You can go to dayofaiusa.org or just dayofai.org. Both work. We'll take you to our website, and all you have to do is pop in your email address and you can get behind the curtain and see about all this information, whether it's the festival that we're doing for students.
If they need to submit like applications sometime, if there's an application deadline
you can find that stuff online about the challenges and whatnot.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'll make sure there's links in the show notes.
Bob, it was so great to talk to you. I feel like you're an OG in the world of technology, coming out of IBM like that.
Yeah, no, that definitely, got me down this track for sure. So yeah, I mean, I care. Like I said, I spent a lot of time in the talent space, but also, part of this AI task force in my school district. And so I care about the current workforce and the future workforce and people's readiness for what's coming. But AI is ubiquitous already. It's only going to get smarter, or seem to be smarter. And so we just need to pay close attention and be ready and not get caught flat-footed to, steer our careers wherever they take us. So again, Jeff, thank you so much for being here. This was great.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.